The church bells rang 12 times that cold Tuesday morning. White flowers covered every surface, filling the air with their sweet smell. I stood next to the wooden box holding what everyone believed was my twin brother Marcus. The preacher's words mixed with the sound of people crying softly. I held a tissue but my eyes were dry. Something felt wrong. Marcus and I shared everything since birth. If he was really gone, wouldn't I feel empty inside? Instead, I felt like he was still out there somewhere. Then my phone made a small sound. A message from a number I didn't know appeared on my screen. The words on my phone made my hands shake so much I almost dropped it. "I'm alive. That's not me in the casket." My heart started beating so fast I could hear it in my ears. Everyone around me was looking at the flowers and crying, but I stared at my phone screen. Who would send such a terrible joke? Or was it really Marcus? If my brother was alive, then who was in that box? And why would someone want us to think Marcus was gone forever? Before we continue, first let me thank you for watching Granny's Voice. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to Deborah from Millington, Tennessee. Thank you for being part of our family. Now, let me tell you everything. My name is Emma Rodriguez and I'm 40 years old. I work as a nurse in Phoenix, Arizona. I never thought my life would become like a scary movie. To understand why everything led to that moment, standing by a grave while getting a message that turned my world upside down, I need to tell you about our beginning. About growing up with Marcus when we were just two kids trying to survive in a house that never felt like home. This story starts in our childhood, full of tears and secrets that only Marcus and I knew about. We were born on a hot summer day in 1984 in a small hospital in Phoenix, Arizona. I came out first, making me the older sister by 3 minutes. Our family didn't have much money. Dad worked fixing air conditioners and Mom cleaned office buildings at night. They got married when they were very young, full of big dreams, but life made those dreams disappear. Phoenix was growing fast back then, but our parents couldn't keep up with all the bills. We lived in a tiny house with brown walls and windows that didn't close right. When summer came, the house got so hot we could barely breathe. It wasn't a happy home. It felt more like a place where people came to argue and be sad. From when I was very little, I knew our parents wished we had never been born. They fought every single day, screaming so loud the neighbors would look at us funny. Why did we have twins? One kid is hard enough. I heard Mom yell one night while Marcus and I hid in our bedroom, holding each other tight under our thin blanket. Money was always the problem. Dad would come home angry and tired, smelling like sweat and machine oil. Mom would cry and say mean things about how he didn't make enough money to take care of us. They only cared about themselves and their problems. Marcus and I became invisible, like we were just extra mouths they couldn't afford to feed. We only had each other to depend on. We protected each other from the coldness in our house. As twins, we looked almost exactly the same, both with black hair, brown eyes, and the same smile when we tried to hide our sadness. But we were different inside. I was the one who spoke up and protected Marcus when kids were mean to him. Marcus was quiet and smart, always reading books and finding ways to make me laugh when I was upset. When we were 6 years old, we learned to take care of ourselves. Breakfast was usually cereal or toast that we made because Mom slept late after working all night. We walked to school holding hands, staying away from the busy streets where older kids might pick on us. One memory I'll never forget happened on my 8th birthday. Our parents had their biggest fight ever about money for birthday presents. Dad threw his coffee cup against the wall and it broke into pieces. Mom cried and went to her bedroom, slamming the door. Marcus and I sat on the old couch, looking at the broken pieces on the floor. There was no birthday cake, no presents, nothing special at all. Marcus looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Emma, did everyone forget it's your birthday?" I hugged him tight, trying not to cry. "It's okay. You remembered, and that's all I need." Marcus disappeared for an hour that afternoon. When he came back, he had picked wildflowers from the empty lot behind our house. He had tied them together with a piece of string from his shoelaces. "Happy birthday, Emma," he said, handing me the most beautiful flower bunch I had ever seen. I started crying, but they were happy tears. "You're the best brother in the whole world," I told him, hugging him so tight. In that moment, even though our family was broken, Marcus and I had something real and good. As we got older, around 12, we started working small jobs to help ourselves. Phoenix was a tough place for kids, but we were strong. I babysat for neighbors after school, watching their little kids and earning $5 each time. Marcus delivered newspapers early in the morning, riding his old bike through the hot streets before the sun came up. We shared every dollar we made. Half went to buy school supplies, and the other half we saved for special treats like ice cream or a movie. "Save your money for something you want," Marcus would always say. But I usually spent mine on him instead. We kept our money hidden in an old shoe box under my bed, scared that our parents would find it and take it away. The nights when our parents fought were the worst times. Their angry voices would rise from the kitchen, and we could hear things being thrown and breaking. Marcus and I would lock ourselves in our shared bedroom, covering our ears and trying to block out the noise. Marcus would cry into his pillow while I held him and told him stories to help him forget. "When we grow up, Marcus, we'll move far away from here. We'll live somewhere peaceful where people don't yell," I would whisper to him. He would nod and wipe his tears. "We'll never fight like Mom and Dad, right, Emma?" I promised him we wouldn't, even though I knew life might not be that simple. Our childhood was full of stress and worry, not the fun kind of adventures kids should have. School, Marcus was much smarter than me. He loved reading every book he could find at the library and got the best grades in our class. I was better at talking to people and solving problems with my hands, like fixing broken toys for the neighbor kids to earn extra money. But we always helped each other. He helped me with my homework, and I taught him how to ride a bike and swim in the community pool during free swim times. One hot summer day, Marcus almost drowned when he got a cramp in his leg. I jumped in and pulled him to the shallow end, both of us coughing and scared. "You saved my life," he said, holding on to me tight. Right then, I knew he was the most important thing in my world. Not just my brother, but a part of my heart. Those growing up years in Phoenix, even though they were hard, made us into fighters. But when we turned 18, our lives started going different ways. Marcus, with his smart brain and big dreams, was meant to go far from home. I decided to stay in Phoenix, connected to its dusty streets and simple life. That was the start of a journey neither of us saw coming. A journey that led to dark secrets, that rainy funeral, and the message that made me question everything I thought I knew. I still remember the day Marcus got his acceptance letter from a college in Seattle. It was a spring afternoon with desert flowers blooming in our tiny yard. We sat on the front steps, feeling the warm breeze on our faces. Marcus opened the envelope with shaking hands, then jumped up with a huge smile. "Emma," I got in. His eyes were so bright, like the whole future was opening up for him. I smiled and hugged him tight, but my stomach felt heavy. I was happy for him but scared too. Scared that the distance between Seattle and Phoenix would pull us apart, not just by miles, but in our hearts. Marcus was always the smart one. Teachers loved him and other kids looked up to him. He had a way of making even the hardest days feel better with his gentle smile. I was different, struggling with books and tests. I liked helping people, the feeling of making someone feel better when they were hurt or scared. While Marcus studied late into the night, I was outside helping elderly neighbors with their groceries or walking dogs for busy families to earn spending money. Even though we were so different, we fit together perfectly. He patiently explained math problems to me, and I taught him how to talk to people and make friends. Those small moments kept us close no matter what else happened in our lives. When Marcus was getting ready to leave for Seattle, I decided not to go to college. I wanted to become a nurse and help people, so I enrolled in a nursing program right here in Phoenix. "I'll stay here and cheer you on from far away," I told him one evening as we watched the sunset paint the desert mountains purple and orange. Marcus took my hand. "You don't have to take care of me forever, Emma. I'll study hard, get a good job, and we'll live near each other again someday." I nodded, but deep in my heart, I knew his dreams were bigger than anything Phoenix could hold. He was meant for something special. The day he got on the plane to Seattle, I stood at the airport gate, watching him wave through the window. "Promise you'll call me every week, Marcus," I shouted over the noise of the engines. He grinned and made a heart shape with his hands. "Promise, but don't forget about me when you become the best nurse in Phoenix." Tears ran down my face as his plane took off, carrying my other half across the country. I stayed in Phoenix, working as a nurse at the children's hospital downtown. The job was hard with long shifts and sick kids, but it felt right. I rented a small apartment, lived simply, and sometimes sent Marcus care packages with his favorite Arizona snacks. My life was quiet but good. Work during the day, watching TV at night, helping my elderly neighbor Mrs. Garcia with her garden on weekends. I didn't dream as big as Marcus, but I was content. As long as he was happy and following his dreams, that was enough for me. In Seattle, Marcus was like a fish in water. He wrote long emails about his classes, new friends, and the beautiful green mountains around the city. "Emma, Seattle is amazing. I walked by the water yesterday and wished you could see how pretty it is," he wrote. He called every Sunday, his voice full of excitement about his studies. Hearing him happy warmed my heart, though sometimes I felt like I was being left behind in the desert while he lived in a magical green world. Then one day, Marcus told me about a girl he met at school. Sarah, a pre-med student from a wealthy family in Seattle. "She's really kind, Emma. Not stuck up like some rich people. She volunteers at the homeless shelter," he said during our Sunday call. I laughed. "Just be careful. Don't let her distract you from your studies." But inside I was worried. Marcus was innocent, and I didn't want him to get his heart broken. But Sarah turned out to be exactly as Marcus described. Sweet, smart, and genuinely in love with my brother. When he brought her to Phoenix for the first time, I could see the difference right away. Sarah wore expensive clothes but talked to me like we were old friends. "Marcus talks about you constantly," she said, helping me make dinner in my tiny kitchen. I watched her carefully, but I couldn't help liking her. She wasn't pretending to be nice. She really was kind. Marcus and Sarah became a couple quickly. After 3 years of dating, they got married. I flew to Seattle for the wedding, my first time leaving Arizona. The ceremony was at a fancy hotel with a view of the mountains and water. I wore a blue dress I bought special for the day, feeling out of place among all the elegant guests. But when Marcus walked out in his black suit, looking so handsome and happy, I forgot about everything else. "Emma, I'm the luckiest person alive," he said, hugging me before the ceremony started. I squeezed his hand. "As long as you're happy, I'm happy too." But deep down, I worried he was entering a world where I might not fit anymore. A world where I couldn't protect him like I always had. Marcus's married life seemed perfect. Sarah became a doctor, and they bought a beautiful house in the hills outside Seattle with big windows and a garden full of flowers. Marcus sent me photos of them hiking in the mountains, smiling and holding hands. "You have to come visit soon. The mountains here are incredible." He would text with pictures of snow-covered peaks. I would laugh and promise to visit, but my work at the hospital kept me busy. I was proud of him, but the gap between our lives grew wider. He was now part of a world of doctors and fancy dinner parties, while I remained a nurse in Phoenix, taking care of sick children and living paycheck to paycheck. Then disaster struck. 5 years after their wedding, Sarah was diagnosed with a rare cancer. Marcus called me, his voice shaking with fear. "Emma, Sarah is really sick. The doctors say the treatment might not work." I immediately requested time off and flew to Seattle. At the hospital, I found Marcus sitting by Sarah's bed, holding her hand. His eyes red from crying. Sarah was weak but smiled when she saw me. "Thank you for coming, Emma. Please take care of Marcus for me." I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. 2 months later, Sarah passed away. Marcus was destroyed. I stayed in Seattle for 3 weeks, trying to help him through the darkest time of his life. "Emma, I don't know how to keep going," he sobbed, his head on my shoulder. I held him like when we were kids. "You're stronger than you think, Marcus. I'll always be here to help you." But I knew he was dealing with a pain I couldn't fully understand. Sarah hadn't just been his wife. She had given him a whole new life full of love and possibilities we never had growing up. After Sarah's funeral, her lawyer asked Marcus to come to his office. I went with him, still wearing my black dress from the service. In the lawyer's fancy office with tall windows and leather chairs, we learned that Sarah had left everything to Marcus. Nearly $25 million, including bank accounts, the Seattle house, a vacation home in the mountains, and shares in her family's medical practice. Marcus was shocked, holding my hand under the big wooden table. "Emma, I don't want this money without Sarah," he whispered. I squeezed his hand. "I know, but this is what Sarah wanted. She wanted you to be taken care of. You have to be strong." We left the lawyer's office quietly, walking out into the rainy Seattle streets. The city looked gray and sad, matching how Marcus felt. His eyes were red and his shoulders shook slightly. I knew he was thinking about Sarah, the wife who had given him a life we never dared imagine back in Phoenix. But I also saw the heavy weight on his shoulders. That huge amount of money wasn't just wealth. It was like a target painted on his back. It made Marcus valuable to people who might not care about him as a person. Not only to strangers, but also to our own family members who had never shown us love before. Back in Phoenix, I returned to my job at the Children's Hospital, but my thoughts were always with Marcus. He stayed in Seattle, living alone in the big house that used to be full of his and Sarah's laughter. I called him every day, trying to pull him out of his sadness. "How are you doing today, Marcus? Do you need me to come up there?" He would try to sound okay over the phone. "I'm fine, Emma. Just feels empty here." I wanted to fly to him right away, but my work schedule and bills kept me tied to Phoenix. All I could do was warn him over and over. "Be careful with that money, Marcus. Don't let anyone take advantage of you." Marcus nodded during our calls, but I could hear the loneliness in his voice, the trust he still had in people who didn't deserve it. News about Marcus's wealth traveled fast back to Phoenix. I wasn't surprised when our parents, who once treated us like we were burdens, suddenly started acting like they cared about us. One evening, Mom called me, her voice sweeter than honey. "Emma, sweetie, how is Marcus doing? We're so worried about our poor boy." I gripped the phone, trying to stay calm. "Marcus is managing, Mom. He needs time to heal." But Mom wouldn't stop asking questions. "He must be so rich now. I bet he wants to help his family, right? You know how hard things are for us." I clenched my teeth, wanting to scream that they had never cared about us when we were kids, but I just said, "Marcus will decide what he wants to do." A few days later, Dad called Marcus directly. Marcus told me about it during our daily phone call, his voice full of confusion. Dad said he wants to fix up the old house and asked if I could help with some money. "Emma, what should I do?" "Decide. If you want to help them a little, that's okay. But don't let them push you around. That's your money, and you earned it through your pain." But Marcus, with his kind heart, sent them a large sum, more than enough to fix their house and pay off all their debts. I was proud of his kindness but worried at the same time. Our parents weren't the type of people who would ever be satisfied. Their greed was like a hole that could never be filled, no matter how much you put into it. They started calling more often. Mom would complain about doctor bills and prescription costs. Dad would hint about wanting a new truck. "Marcus, honey, you have that big house and all that money. Why not share a little with your parents who raised you?" Mom said during a call that Marcus told me about. I was angry. "They think you're like a personal bank account, Marcus. You need to stand up to them." He agreed over the phone, but I could hear the tiredness in his voice. "I just want them to be happy, Emma. They're still our parents." I wanted to yell that they didn't deserve his kindness, but I knew Marcus needed time to see the truth for himself. I started noticing changes in how our parents treated me too. They invited me to dinner, something they hadn't done in years. The dinner happened at the old Phoenix house where we grew up. Dad opened a bottle of wine he had bought with Marcus's money. Mom smiled brightly, but I could see something calculating in her eyes. Emma, honey, talk to Marcus for us, Dad said, his voice smooth like syrup. He has so much money now. He wouldn't want his parents to struggle, would he? I held my fork tightly, forcing myself to stay calm. Marcus has already helped you plenty. Don't ask for more. Mom looked at me with a flash of anger in her eyes. What's that supposed to mean? Family is supposed to help each other. I stood up and left without saying another word. Deep down, I knew they wouldn't stop asking for money. Marcus was starting to feel the pressure too. One night he called me, his voice shaking. Emma, Mom and Dad want me to put some of the house in their names. They say it's the right thing to do for family. I almost yelled into the phone. The right thing to do. What have they ever done for us besides fight and ignore us? Marcus, don't agree to that. He started crying. I know you're right, but I don't want them to hate me. I made my voice gentle. They don't hate you, Marcus. They just want your money. You have to protect yourself. I tried to convince him, my heart burning with frustration and worry. The pressure from our parents got worse and worse. One morning Marcus called me in a panic. Emma, Mom and Dad are demanding I give them $500,000 right now. They say if I don't, I'm a selfish son who doesn't care about family. I was so angry I could barely speak. I couldn't take it anymore. I called in sick to work and drove straight to our parents' house. Inside, Dad was sitting on his new leather couch watching his new big screen TV. Mom was in the kitchen cooking on her new stove. Everything bought with Marcus's money. I didn't waste time with polite talk. Stop it. Stop pressuring Marcus for money. He's done enough for you. Dad looked at me with a mean smile. What are you talking about, Emma? Marcus has millions of dollars. What's wrong with him helping his parents? It's what good children do. Mom joined in, her voice cold as ice. He has $25 million, Emma. Sharing a few $100,000 with us is perfectly reasonable. I was shocked by how shameless they were. You never cared about us when we were kids, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Don't pretend to be good parents now. Dad stood up and pointed his finger at me. How dare you talk to us like that? If it weren't for me and your mother, you wouldn't even exist. I turned around and walked out, my heart heavy with sadness. They felt no shame, no guilt about using their own children. The pressure Marcus faced wasn't just from our parents. Word about his wealth had spread around Seattle, and strangers started approaching him. Someone claiming to be Sarah's old friend called, trying to get him to invest in a fake business. Another person sent letters asking for charity donations. Marcus was exhausted from saying no to everyone, but he didn't want to hurt people's feelings. Emma, it feels like everyone is looking at my bank account instead of seeing me as a person, he said once, his voice bitter with disappointment. All I could do was comfort him from far away. You're not alone, Marcus. I'll always be here supporting you. During those months, I could hear Marcus's worry getting worse with every phone call. Each time we talked, I could detect fear growing in his voice. Not fear of losing his money, but fear of losing himself in the storm of greed from people around him. And most scary of all, our parents, who should have been his safe place, were the ones pressuring him the most. One evening, as I was eating a simple dinner in my small apartment, Mom called me. Her voice was so sweet it made my skin crawl. Emma, I was thinking we should plan a family vacation. Marcus has that beautiful mountain house Sarah left him, right? We could all go there together, help him feel better, and bring the family closer. I didn't say anything for a moment. The idea sounded nice, but something felt wrong. Our parents had never cared about bringing the family together. They only showed interest when Marcus was sitting on a pile of money. I immediately called Marcus and told him about Mom's suggestion. He was quiet for a while, then said, Emma, I was actually thinking a trip might help me feel better. These past few months have been so hard. I hesitated. Are you sure about this? I don't trust Mom and Dad. Marcus gave a weak laugh. They're our parents, Emma. Maybe they really want to make things better between us. I wanted to argue, but his voice was full of hope. I couldn't bear to crush that tiny bit of light in his darkness. "All right, I'll come with you," I said. "But if anything feels wrong, you listen to me, okay?" The trip was planned quickly. Our parents suggested spending a long weekend at Sarah's mountain house, the beautiful cabin surrounded by tall pine trees and clear streams. Marcus was excited and started making preparations. He sent me pictures of the house, a gorgeous wooden cabin with stone fireplaces, cozy bedrooms, and windows that looked out at snow-capped mountains. "Emma, you're going to love it here," he texted with a happy face. I smiled at his excitement, but my bad feeling wouldn't go away. Our parents were too enthusiastic, too eager to make this trip happen. They called constantly, asking about details of the house, even suggesting we hire someone to cook and clean for us during the stay. "We'll handle all the arrangements," Dad said, his voice full of fake enthusiasm. I agreed, but my worry grew stronger each day. Then, the night before we were supposed to leave, Mom called me, her voice full of panic. "Emma, your father is really sick. We probably can't go on the trip." I was confused. Sick with what? So suddenly. "Does Marcus know?" Mom sighed dramatically. "We've already told Marcus. But we insisted he should still go. Don't cancel the plans. He needs this time to relax after everything he's been through. We worked so hard to set this up. Don't let it go to waste." I bit my lip, feeling like something invisible was tightening around my chest. "Are you sure you can't come? It would be more fun with the whole family." But Mom brushed off my concern. "It's fine, Emma. You go with Marcus. Take care of him. Your father will be better soon, and we'll all go together next time." I hung up the phone, my heart beating fast. Something was definitely wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I called Marcus right away to check on what Mom had told me. He confirmed that our parents had called him, his voice sad. "Mom said Dad has the flu and can't travel, but she really wants us to still go. She said I need to get away and clear my head after Sarah's death." I frowned. This feels strange to me. Why would Dad get sick right before the trip? Marcus paused, then said, "Maybe you're thinking too much about it. It'll be fine, Emma. The caretaker is already arranged by Mom and Dad. You'll still come with me, right?" I sighed, not wanting to disappoint him when he seemed a little happier. "All right, I'll go with you." On the day of the trip, I drove from Phoenix to Seattle. Then we took Marcus's car up into the mountains. Marcus met me at his house, his smile brighter than it had been in months, though his eyes still carried sadness from losing Sarah. The mountain house was even more beautiful than the pictures, like something from a fairy tale book. The caretaker was an older man named Tom who seemed nice and professional. "Everything's ready for your stay," he said in a calm voice. Marcus grabbed my hand, pulling me onto the wooden deck that looked out at the forest. "Emma, this is going to be so good for us. Just you and me together like when we were kids." We spent the first day walking through the pine trees and talking by the fireplace. Marcus laughed more, as if the heavy weight on his shoulders had gotten lighter. But on the second day the weather started getting bad. Dark clouds rolled over the mountains, and the wind began to howl through the trees. Tom assured us everything was fine. "It's just a mountain storm. These happen all the time up here. We'll be safe inside," he said. I nodded but told Marcus we should stay in the main part of the house where it was warmest and safest. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the windows and making sure all the doors were locked. The phone line started acting strange. The regular phone wouldn't work, and our cell phones had no signal. "Probably just the storm," Tom said, but his worried expression made me feel uneasy. At dawn on the third day, the storm hit like an angry monster. Wind so strong it shook the whole house, and rain that sounded like rocks hitting the windows. Marcus held my hand tight, his face pale with fear. "Emma, I'm scared. What if a tree falls on the house?" I pulled him away from the windows into the center room of the house. "Stay calm, Marcus. We'll be okay." But then, like in a nightmare, we heard a loud explosion from somewhere in the house. "The power generator just blew," Tom shouted over the howling wind. All the lights went out, and we were left in darkness. The wind was so loud we could barely hear each other talk. I helped Marcus find a flashlight, keeping him close to me. "Listen to me, Marcus. Stay right next to me no matter what happens, okay?" He nodded, his eyes wide with fear. Tom was running around trying to find backup power and checking all the windows. But before we could figure out what to do next, we heard a terrible cracking sound from outside. A huge tree was falling toward the house. The crash was so loud it felt like the world was ending. Part of the roof caved in, and cold air and rain poured into the house. I grabbed Marcus and pulled him toward what looked like the safest part of the house that was still standing. "We need to get out of here," I shouted, but the storm outside looked even more dangerous than staying inside. Tom appeared with emergency supplies, his face grim. "The road down the mountain is blocked by fallen trees. We're trapped up here until the storm passes." We huddled together in the one room that still had a solid roof, wrapped in blankets, listening to the storm rage outside. Hours passed like days. We shared granola bars and bottled water, trying to stay warm. Marcus leaned against me, just like when we were kids hiding from our parents' fights. "Emma, what if we don't make it?" he whispered. I held him tight. "Don't think like that. We've survived everything else together. We'll survive this too." Finally, after what felt like forever, the storm began to calm down. The wind stopped howling and the rain became lighter. Tom managed to get a weak signal on an emergency radio and called for help. "Rescue crews are on their way, but it might take hours to clear the road," he reported. We waited, cold and tired but grateful to be alive. When the rescue team finally arrived, they had to use chainsaws to cut through the fallen trees blocking the mountain road. The leader of the rescue team, a woman named Captain Martinez, checked us over to make sure we weren't hurt. "You're lucky," she said. "That was one of the worst mountain storms we've seen in years." They took us down the mountain in their special rescue truck, driving carefully around all the storm damage. Marcus held my hand the whole way, both of us quiet and shaken. When we finally made it back to Seattle, I felt like we had escaped something terrible. But I couldn't shake the feeling that our parents' sudden illness and absence from the trip was more than just bad timing. That night, in Marcus's Seattle house, we sat by his fireplace, drinking hot chocolate and trying to process what had happened. "Emma," Marcus said quietly, "what if Mom and Dad knew that storm was coming? What if they didn't want to get trapped up there with us?" I looked at him, seeing my own suspicions reflected in his eyes. "I've been thinking the same thing, Marcus. It's too much of a coincidence." We talked late into the night, remembering all the strange things about the trip. How eager our parents were to plan it. How they suddenly couldn't go at the last minute. How they insisted we should go anyway, even without them. "But why would they want us to get hurt?" Marcus asked, though I could see in his face that he was starting to understand. "Your money," I said softly. "If something happened to you up there, who do you think would inherit everything?" Marcus was quiet for a long time. "I never made a will, Emma. Legally, everything would go to our parents." The truth hit us both like a cold wind. Our parents hadn't wanted to spend time with us. They had wanted us out of the way. I held Marcus as he started to cry, not from the storm, but from the realization that our parents had been willing to risk our lives for money. Over the next few days, Marcus became very depressed. He barely ate and wouldn't answer his phone when our parents called. I stayed with him in Seattle, taking time off from my job in Phoenix. Marcus lay in bed most days, staring at the ceiling like he was lost in a dark place I couldn't reach. Every time I tried to get him to eat or go for a walk, he would just shake his head. "What's the point, Emma? Even our own parents don't love us." I sat beside him, holding his hand. "I love you, Marcus. That has to count for something." But I could see the pain in his eyes, deeper than when Sarah died. At least Sarah's love had been real. Now he was learning that even his parents' recent kindness was fake. 3 weeks after we came back from the mountain house, I convinced Marcus to see a lawyer about making a will. "You need to protect yourself," I told him. "If something happens to you, Your money should go to people who actually care about you. We went to see a lawyer named Mr. Patterson in downtown Seattle. He was a kind older man with gray hair and gentle eyes. I explained our situation, how our parents were pressuring Marcus for money and how we suspected they had put us in danger. Mr. Patterson listened carefully, then looked at Marcus with concern. Son, I've seen this happen before. Money can make people do terrible things, even family members. We set up a will that left everything to me if Marcus died. And if both of us died, the money would go to the children's hospital where I worked. This will stay completely secret, Mr. Patterson promised. Your parents won't know about it unless something happens to you. Marcus felt a little better after we left the lawyer's office. At least now I know the money will go somewhere good, he said. But I could tell he was still heartbroken about our parents. That evening, our parents called both of us, wanting to know why we had been so quiet since the mountain trip. We've been worried sick about you too, Mom said, her voice full of fake concern. Did something happen up there? I wanted to scream that we knew what they had tried to do, but Marcus squeezed my hand, reminding me to stay calm. We're fine, I said simply. Just tired from the storm. Dad got on the phone. Well, we're glad you're safe. By the way, Marcus, we've been thinking about that money discussion we had before. We really could use some help with medical bills. I felt my anger rising, but I kept my voice steady. Maybe Marcus needs a break from thinking about money right now, Dad. There was silence on the other end. Then Mom's voice turned cold. Family helps family, Emma. We raised you too, and now it's your turn to help us. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. Marcus looked at me with sad eyes. They're never going to stop, are they? I shook my head. Not unless we make them stop. We decided that Marcus needed to get away from Seattle for a while, somewhere our parents couldn't find him and pressure him. I suggested he come stay with me in Phoenix for a few months. We can be kids again, I told him. Just you and me, like before all this money and drama. Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. I'd like that, Emma. He packed a small bag, leaving most of his things in Seattle. We decided not to tell our parents where he was going. I drove him to my small apartment in Phoenix, and for the first time in months I saw him relax. Your place is so cozy, he said, sitting on my old couch and petting my neighbor's cat who liked to visit. It feels like home. We spent 2 peaceful months together. Marcus helped me in my garden, and I taught him to cook simple Mexican food. He started smiling again, and the sadness in his eyes began to fade. We would sit on my tiny balcony in the evenings, watching the Arizona sunsets and talking like we used to when we were children. Emma, I want to do something good with Sarah's money, he said one evening. Maybe build a free clinic for kids who can't afford doctors. I was so proud of him. Even after everything, he still wanted to help people. But our peaceful time was interrupted when our parents figured out where Marcus was. They started calling constantly, demanding to know why he was hiding from them. You can't run away from family responsibilities, Dad yelled over the phone one day. Mom was even worse. We gave you life, Marcus. We deserve to be taken care of in our old age. I watched my brother's face crumble every time they called. The happiness he had found in Phoenix was being destroyed by their greed. One day I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to their house in the old neighborhood, ready to have it out with them once and for all. I found them in their newly renovated kitchen, counting out bills on their granite countertop. This needs to stop, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Marcus has given you enough money. Leave him alone. Dad looked at me with cold eyes. He's given us crumbs, Emma. He has $25 million. We deserve at least half of that. Mom nodded. We're his parents. We have rights. I stared at them in disbelief. Rights? You ignored us our whole childhood. You fought and screamed and made our lives miserable. Now you want to be rewarded for that. Dad stood up, his face red with anger. How dare you speak to us like that? We put a roof over your heads. We fed you. I laughed bitterly. We fed ourselves, Dad. We took care of ourselves because you were too busy fighting to notice us. I left their house feeling sick to my stomach. That night I held Marcus while he cried. They're never going to see us as anything more than a way to get money, he said. I stroked his hair like I used to when we were kids. Then we don't need them in our lives anymore. We decided to cut off all contact with our parents. Marcus changed his phone number and I told them not to call me anymore. For a few months we had peace. Marcus started working on his plan to build the free clinic. He met with architects and doctors. His eyes bright with purpose again. But then something terrible happened that changed everything. Marcus got food poisoning from a restaurant in Phoenix. It seemed like a normal case at first. He was sick for a day, throwing up and feeling weak. But then he got much worse. I rushed him to the hospital where I worked, but the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong. His kidneys started failing and his liver wasn't working right. This doesn't look like food poisoning, Dr. Rodriguez told me privately. The blood tests show something else, something that looks like poisoning from a chemical. My heart stopped. Are you saying someone tried to poison my brother? She nodded grimly. I think you should call the police. The police investigation revealed that Marcus had been slowly poisoned over several weeks with a chemical that was hard to detect. Someone had been putting small amounts in his food or drinks, making him sick gradually so it would look like a natural illness. I sat by Marcus's hospital bed, holding his hand while machines helped him breathe. Who would do this? I whispered, but deep in my heart I already knew. Only our parents had been angry enough and desperate enough to hurt him. The police found evidence that our father had bought the poison online using a fake name. They also discovered that our parents had been following us, watching our routines, looking for chances to get close to Marcus. When the police arrested our parents, Mom screamed and cried, claiming they were innocent. We would never hurt our children, she wailed. But Dad was quieter, his face hard and cold. I think he knew they had been caught. The trial was scheduled for 6 months later, but Marcus was too sick to testify. The poison had damaged his organs badly, and the doctors weren't sure if he would recover completely. I took a leave of absence from work to stay with him every day. I'm so sorry, Emma, he whispered during one of his stronger moments. I brought this danger to both of us. I squeezed his hand. You didn't do anything wrong, Marcus. You're the victim here. 1 month after the arrest, Marcus took a turn for the worse. The damage to his organs was too severe, and his body started shutting down. I held his hand as he struggled to breathe, his eyes looking into mine with so much love. Emma, promise me you'll use the money to help people. Don't let what our parents did make you bitter. I was crying so hard I could barely speak. Don't talk like that, Marcus. You're going to get better. But he smiled sadly. We both know that's not true. I'm ready to go be with Sarah. But you have to keep living, Emma. Keep being the amazing person you've always been. Marcus died on a Tuesday morning while I was holding his hand. The machine stopped beeping, and suddenly my other half was gone forever. I felt like my heart had been ripped out of my chest. The funeral home was full of people. His friends from Seattle, doctors he had worked with on the clinic project, nurses from my hospital, and patients whose lives I had touched over the years. Even though the sadness was overwhelming, I could see how many lives Marcus had made better in his short time on Earth. Our parents were in jail awaiting trial, so they couldn't attend the funeral. I was glad. They had lost the right to say goodbye to the son they had tried to eliminate. The day of the funeral was gray and cold, with a light rain falling. I stood next to Marcus's casket, covered in white roses, his favorite flowers. People came up to me all day, sharing stories about how kind Marcus had been, how he had helped them or made them smile. He was the most generous person I ever met, said Dr. Kim, who had been working with him on the clinic project. I nodded, trying to smile through my tears. During the service, I spoke about my brother, about how he had been my protector and my best friend since we were born. Marcus believed in doing good things with whatever life gave you, I said to the crowd. Even when bad things happened, he never stopped caring about other people. As the service ended and people began to leave, I stood alone by the grave. The rain was getting heavier, soaking through my black dress, but I didn't care. I whispered to Marcus, telling him how much I loved him and how sorry I was that I couldn't protect him from our parents' greed. "I promise I'll finish the clinic for you," I said. "And I'll make sure other kids don't go through what we did." As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out, expecting maybe a message from one of the funeral guests. Instead, there was a text from a number I didn't recognize. My hands started shaking as I read the words on the screen. "I'm alive. That's not me in the casket." My heart stopped beating for a moment. The phone felt heavy in my hands, like it might fall and shatter on the wet ground. I looked around the empty cemetery, wondering if this was someone's idea of a cruel joke. Who would send such a horrible message on the day of my brother's funeral? I typed back with trembling fingers. "Who is this?" The reply came quickly. "Can't say. They're watching. Don't trust our parents." My mind was spinning. Was this really Marcus? But I had held his hand when he died. I had seen his body in the hospital. How could he be alive? Maybe someone was trying to trick me, or maybe I was losing my mind from grief. I shoved the phone back in my purse and ran to my car, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. I sat in the parking lot of the cemetery, rain pounding on my windshield, trying to think clearly. If Marcus was alive, where had he been for the past week? And whose body had we buried? But if he wasn't alive, who was sending these messages and why? I drove to a quiet coffee shop and sat in the back corner, pulling out my phone to read the message again. "I'm alive. That's not me in the casket." The words looked so real on the screen, but how could they be true? I texted back. "If this is really you, prove it. Tell me something only Marcus would know." The response came an hour later. "Remember the wildflowers I picked for your 8th birthday? You said I was the best brother in the whole world." My hand started shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Only Marcus would remember that detail from so many years ago. But how was this possible? I had watched him die in the hospital. I had planned his funeral. I had seen his body in the casket. Nothing made sense anymore. I texted back. "Where are you? I need to see you." The reply was, "Meet me at Papago Park, by the red rocks where we used to play as kids. Tomorrow at sunset. Come alone and don't tell anyone." I barely slept that night, my mind racing with questions and possibilities. Part of me hoped it was really Marcus, that somehow he had survived and was hiding for a good reason. But another part of me worried this was a trap, that someone was using my grief to hurt me. The next evening I drove to Papago Park, my heart hammering in my chest. The red sandstone rocks glowed orange in the setting sun, looking exactly like they had when Marcus and I were children playing hide and seek among them. I parked my car and walked toward our old favorite climbing spot, my eyes searching the shadows between the rocks. "Marcus!" called softly. A figure stepped out from behind a boulder, thin and wearing a baseball cap pulled low. When he lifted his head, I saw my brother's face. Older, more tired, with a beard he had never worn before, but definitely Marcus. "Emma," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. I ran to him and threw my arms around him, crying and laughing at the same time. "Marcus, is it really you? How is this possible? I watched you die in the hospital." He held me tight and I could feel him shaking. "I can't explain everything here. It's not safe. But Emma, our parents didn't just try to poison me. They faked my death to get the inheritance money. The person in that hospital bed wasn't me." I pulled back to look at his face, trying to understand. "What are you talking about? I was there every day. I held your hand." Marcus looked around nervously, as if someone might be watching us. "They drugged me and took me somewhere else. They found someone else who was dying, maybe a homeless person or someone from another hospital, and used that person's body instead of mine. I've been hidden away, barely alive, while they went through with their plan to inherit my money." My legs felt weak, and I sat down hard on a nearby rock. "But I saw you. I talked to you. Marcus sat beside me. That wasn't me, Emma. I think they used drugs to keep me unconscious while they faked my death. How did you escape? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Marcus looked out at the desert. His eyes haunted. A nurse at the place where they were keeping me figured out something was wrong. She helped me get away, but I've been hiding ever since. I couldn't contact you because I knew they were watching. Our parents have people helping them. Maybe other family members who want a share of the money, or people they hired. I felt sick to my stomach. Marcus, we need to call the police right now. He shook his head. Not yet. We need proof first. If we go to the police without evidence, our parents will just say I'm mentally ill from the poisoning, and their accomplices will back them up. We sat together as the sun set behind the red rocks, planning what to do next. Marcus had been watching from a distance, learning about our parents' plan to claim his inheritance. They have a court hearing scheduled for next week to officially transfer the money to them, he said. That's when we'll expose them. I held his hand, feeling like I was in a dream. My brother was alive, but our parents were even more evil than I had imagined. Where have you been staying? Yes. Marcus pointed toward the desert. There's an old mining cabin about 20 miles out. The nurse who helped me has been bringing me food and water. But Emma, you have to be careful. If they find out you know I'm alive, they'll try to hurt you too. I squeezed his hand. I don't care about the danger. We're going to stop them. We arranged to meet again the next day to plan our strategy. Marcus would stay hidden while I gathered evidence. I drove home in a daze, my mind reeling from everything I had learned. My brother was alive, but he had been through something horrific. Our parents weren't just greedy. They were willing to fake their own son's death for money. That night I called in sick to work and started investigating. I went to the funeral home and asked to see the paperwork from Marcus's burial. The director, Mr. Santos, was surprised by my request. Is everything all right, Miss Rodriguez? He asked. I just need to see the death certificate and any other documents, I said, trying to sound normal. As I looked through the papers, I noticed something strange. The body had been identified by our parents, not by me. I had been so upset at the time that I hadn't questioned it. The death certificate was signed by a doctor I had never heard of, not by Dr. Rodriguez, who had been taking care of Marcus. I asked Mr. Santos about it. Sometimes when families are too grief-stricken, parents handle the identification process, he explained. But I knew our parents had been in jail when Marcus supposedly died. Something was very wrong with the timeline. I spent the rest of the day making phone calls and asking questions. I discovered that our parents had been released on bail just days before Marcus's supposed death, something I hadn't known because I had been focused on taking care of him. I also learned that the doctor who signed the death certificate worked at a small clinic across town, not at the major hospital where Marcus had been treated. When I called the clinic, they said Dr. Wilson had quit suddenly and left no forwarding address. Everything was starting to make sense in the most horrible way possible. Our parents had somehow arranged for Marcus to disappear and for a substitute body to take his place. The next evening I met Marcus again at Papago Park. I shared everything I had discovered, and his face grew dark with anger. They planned this perfectly, he said. They knew I was too sick to fight back, and they counted on you being too upset to ask questions. I felt guilty for not investigating sooner, but Marcus took my hand. You couldn't have known, Emma. You were grieving for someone you thought was dead. They used your love for me against you. We decided that we needed help from someone with authority who could investigate properly. Marcus suggested we contact the FBI, since our parents had committed fraud across state lines. I called the FBI the next morning and explained the situation to Agent Sarah Chen. At first, she sounded skeptical. Stories about fake deaths and stolen inheritances sounded like something from a movie. But when I provided all the evidence I had gathered, she agreed to meet with us. We arranged to meet at the FBI office in Phoenix, and I picked up Marcus from his hiding place in the desert. He was nervous about coming out into the open, but we both knew it was time to trust the authorities. Agent Chen was a serious woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. When Marcus walked into her office, she studied his face carefully. "If you're really Marcus Rodriguez, we'll need to verify your identity with fingerprints and DNA," she said. Marcus nodded. "I want you to verify it. I want everyone to know I'm alive." The tests took several hours, but the results confirmed what I already knew in my heart. This was really my brother. Agent Chen's expression grew serious as she reviewed all our evidence. "This is one of the most elaborate fraud cases I've seen," she said. "Your parents didn't just try to steal money. They committed multiple felonies including kidnapping, fraud, and filing false documents." She explained that they would arrest our parents immediately and investigate their accomplices. "We'll need you both to stay in protective custody until we can round up everyone involved," Agent Chen said. "Your parents may have hired people to watch you, and if they realize Marcus is alive, they might try to hurt both of you." We spent the next 3 days in a safe house, waiting while the FBI built their case. Marcus was still weak from everything he had been through, but each day he seemed a little stronger. "Emma," he said on our last night there, "I want you to know that even in my darkest moments, thinking about you kept me going. You've always been my anchor." I hugged him tight. "We're going to get through this together, just like we always have." The FBI arrested our parents and 3 other people who had helped them: the fake doctor who signed the death certificate, a funeral home employee who had helped switch the bodies, and a distant cousin who had provided them with information about our routines. When Agent Chen showed us the evidence they had gathered, I felt sick. Our parents had planned every detail, from finding a homeless person who had died of natural causes to bribing officials to look the other way. They were going to split the $25 million 5 ways, Agent Chen explained. Each person involved would have received about $5 million. The trial began 6 months later. I sat in the courtroom every day, holding Marcus's hand as we listened to the prosecution present their case. Our parents looked older and smaller than I remembered, sitting at the defendant's table in their orange jail uniforms. When Mom looked at us, her eyes were full of hatred, not remorse. "You ruined everything," she mouthed at me during a break. I felt nothing but pity for her. Dad never looked at us at all, staring straight ahead like we didn't exist. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The jury took only 3 hours to find all 5 defendants guilty on all charges. Our parents were sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. As they were led away in handcuffs, Mom turned back one last time. "We gave you life," she screamed. "You owe us everything." I stood up and looked her in the eye. "You gave us life, but you never gave us love. We don't owe you anything." The judge banged his gavel, and they were gone forever. Outside the courthouse, Marcus and I stood in the sunshine, feeling free for the first time in our lives. "It's over," he said, his voice full of relief. I nodded, but I knew our real journey was just beginning. We had each other, we had survived, and now we could finally build the life we had always dreamed of. Marcus decided to finish building the free clinic in Sarah's memory, but now it would also honor the people who had helped us. The nurse who had saved his life, Agent Chen who had believed our story, and all the good people who had stood by us. I took a job at the new clinic, and we worked side by side every day, helping children whose families couldn't afford medical care. "This feels right," Marcus said one day as we watched kids playing in the clinic's waiting room. I agreed. We had turned our painful experience into something beautiful and meaningful. Our parents had tried to destroy us for money, but instead they had made us stronger. The clinic opened a year after the trial, and it was everything Marcus had dreamed it would be. Bright, cheerful rooms full of toys and books, doctors and nurses who truly cared about their patients, and free medical care for any child who needed it. On opening day, families lined up outside the door, grateful for the chance to get help for their children. Marcus and I cut the ribbon together, and I saw tears of joy in his eyes. "Sarah would be so proud," I whispered. He nodded. "And so would the real us, the kids we used to be who just wanted someone to care about them." As we walked through the clinic, greeting families and watching children smile, I knew we had found our purpose. 6 months later, we received a letter in the mail from our parents' lawyer. They wanted to see us, claiming they had something important to say. Marcus and I discussed it for hours. "I don't want to give them the satisfaction," he said. "But I felt differently. Maybe we need to see them one last time, to close this chapter forever." We drove to the prison on a cold winter morning. Our parents looked much older, their hair gray and their faces lined with bitterness. They sat across from us at a metal table, separated by thick glass. Mom spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're sorry," she said. "We were desperate and we made terrible choices." Dad nodded. "We never meant for things to go so far. We just wanted financial security." I looked at them, feeling nothing but sadness. "You had 2 children who loved you," I said. "That should have been enough security for anyone." Marcus leaned forward. "We forgive you because holding on to anger would poison us the way greed poisoned you. But forgiveness doesn't mean we can have a relationship. You chose money over your children, and that choice has consequences." We stood up to leave, and Mom pressed her hand against the glass. "Will you ever visit again?" she asked. I shook my head. "Goodbye, Mom. I hope someday you understand what you threw away." Walking out of that prison, I felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Marcus and I had said what we needed to say, and now we could move forward completely free from the past. "Do you think they really meant it when they said they were sorry?" Marcus asked as we drove away. Shrugged. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that we survived, we're together, and we're doing good things with our lives." That evening, we sat on the porch of Marcus's new house. Not the mansion in Seattle, but a simple home near the clinic where children's laughter could be heard from the playground next door. "Emma," Marcus said, watching the sunset paint the desert sky in shades of orange and pink, "do you ever wonder what our lives would have been like if our parents had actually loved us?" I thought about it for a moment. "Maybe we would have been different people," I said. "Maybe we wouldn't have learned to be so strong, or to value each other so much, or to understand how precious real love is." Marcus smiled. "So maybe, in a strange way, their neglect taught us something valuable." He nodded. "It taught us that family isn't just about blood. It's about people who would do anything for each other, who choose to love each other every day." We sat in comfortable silence, 2 survivors who had found their way home to each other. 2 years later, the clinic had helped over 1,000 children, and Marcus and I had become respected members of our community. He had started dating a teacher named Lisa who worked at the elementary school next to the clinic. She was kind and patient, and she loved hearing stories about our childhood adventures in the desert. "You two have an amazing bond," she told me one day. "I've never seen siblings who were so connected." Smiled. "We had to be. We were all each other had for a long time." Marcus seemed truly happy for the first time since Sarah's death. The nightmares about being kidnapped and hidden had stopped, and he was sleeping peacefully again. I had also found love with Dr. Michael Torres, who ran the emergency room at the hospital where I used to work. He understood my dedication to helping people and never minded that Marcus and I were so close. "Your brother is lucky to have you," he told me. "And you're both lucky to have survived what you went through." Our story had been featured in newspapers and on television, and sometimes people recognized us on the street. They would thank us for building the clinic or tell us how our story had inspired them. But the best moments were the quiet ones. Marcus and I working side by side at the clinic, or having dinner together on Sunday nights, or just sitting together and knowing we were safe. One evening, as we were closing the clinic after a busy day, Marcus turned to me with a serious expression. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you." My heart skipped a beat. After everything we had been through, I still worried when he looked worried. "What is it?" I asked. He smiled and pulled out a small velvet box. "I'm going to ask Lisa to marry me, and I wanted you to be the first to know." I squeezed him in the biggest hug, feeling tears of joy run down my cheeks. "She's perfect for you, Marcus. I'm so happy." He opened the box to show me a simple but beautiful diamond ring. "I was hoping you'd help me plan the proposal. You always know how to make things special." We spent the next week planning the perfect proposal. Lisa loved wildflowers, just like I had when Marcus picked them for my 8th birthday. So we decorated the clinic's garden with wildflowers of every color, and Marcus proposed right there among the children's playground and the healing place we had built together. She said yes, of course, and we all cried happy tears. Their wedding was small but perfect, held in the clinic's garden with all our friends and the families we had helped over the years. I was Lisa's maid of honor, and as I watched my brother dance with his new wife, I felt complete. He deserved this happiness after everything he had survived. Michael and I married a year later, and Marcus walked me down the aisle since our father was in prison and no longer part of our lives. "I'm proud of the woman you've become," he whispered as we reached the altar. "Dad and Mom's loss was the world's gain. Our weddings were everything our parents' marriage never was. Full of real love, mutual respect, and people who genuinely cared about each other. We had learned from their mistakes and built something beautiful instead." Both Marcus and I had found partners who understood that we came as a package deal. Lisa and Michael never minded that we were so close, and they became close friends themselves. 5 years after Marcus's fake funeral, we held a celebration at the clinic to mark all the lives we had saved and changed. Hundreds of people came, children we had treated, families we had helped, and medical professionals who had joined our mission. The governor of Arizona gave us awards for our community service, and the mayor declared it Rodriguez Family Day, in honor of what we had built together. But the moment that meant the most to me was when a little girl named Sophia, who had been one of our first patients, ran up to Marcus with a drawing she had made. It showed 2 stick figures holding hands with hearts over their heads. "This is you and Miss Emma," she said. "You saved my life when I was sick." Marcus knelt down to Sophia's level and took the drawing. "Thank you, sweetheart. This is the most beautiful picture I've ever seen." As I watched him with Sophia, I remembered the scared little boy he had been, and the brave man he had become. Our parents had tried to destroy us, but we had turned their cruelty into compassion. We had taken the worst thing that ever happened to us and used it to help other people. That night, as Michael and I walked home from the celebration, I thought about how strange life could be. "Do you think everything happens for a reason?" I asked him. He squeezed my hand. "I think you and Marcus made everything happen for a reason. You chose to build something good from something terrible." Thanks for watching Granny's Voice.